I'm super excited about having to the stage. For some of you, you got to see my interview with her. I think that you all are going to absolutely love her. But one of the things that I love is that her goal and her mission now is to empower women to become the heroes of their own lives, right? Sometimes you see on social media where it talks about, no one's going to come save you. You have to save yourself. You have to put the crown on yourself. You have to become that hero. And I just love her energy and her passion and her story, not only because she has a lot of diverse perspective, as she started in the business world with another wellness company called Quest Nutrition. Her and her husband were co-founders, which was $1 billion company. But more importantly, as we were talking backstage, she's like, but I was in film school. That's how I met my husband. And like the passion was like, how can we do things on film and content to create a bigger impact? And so I think that you all are going to be super excited about her message. She is the author of her new book that's out. And her new book is called, does anybody know the name of it? Radical Confidence. And the reason I actually love that is I think that for so many people, a message for me my entire life was my dad dropping me off for school and saying being positive and confident in all you do, positive and confident. And so like having radical confidence, it's about self-awareness and giving yourself that healing and that celebration and that joy to know that you're enough. And so if you guys would help me welcome to the stage Lisa Bilyeu. Lisa Bilyeu. Awesome. How are you feeling?
Wow, I literally said, I could get hit by a bus right now and I would die happy. Hells yeah, people. Hells yeah. You guys are amazing. That was some energy right there. Whew.
We were talking about Lisa's experience with Quest Nutrition, which was still is a wellness company, and we were talking a little bit about product and ketones, and one of the things that I really thought was neat was she was like, that was business, whatever, it was fun, it was passion for that, but she's like, you could see her light up when she said, she was telling me about how she met Tom. I was like, how did you meet Tom? And she was talking about her background in filmmaking, and she's like, and that's what we always want to do, so we started making content to leave an impact. And so I just thought it was amazing. But the thing that I think was really neat was just the conversation around health, nutrition, wellness, and business. And so I don't know if you don't mind kind of share with everybody kind of your start in business and what that looked like. And just give them a little bit of color about you. Because I know that we're going to get into your book and radical confidence and empowerment and some of the things that you went through. But one of the things that I just enjoyed was talking to you about kind of this other side of business. And there is a polarity, right, with what you're doing now compared to the whole business side of manufacturing products and selling products. It's very different.
It is, but at the same time, it's the same as anything, where for me, the struggle that I've had is, what do you do for business, and then what do you want to do with your heart? And sometimes I find myself not enjoying my life. And in those moments, I remind myself of my mission. I remind myself of why I get out of bed every day. Because having a mission really makes you, to me, overcome all the struggles, the negative mindset or the negative voice that I have in my head that every morning is telling me I'm no good. I go, okay, what am I not good at? And so when it tells me what I'm not good at, I then go, cool, I need to get better at that. But I never let that voice in my head stop me from going after that mission or that purpose. And that's where you have to be so grounded. Because when you're dealing with businesses, there's always challenges. There's people's emotions. There's your employees. There's how you're going to make, where's your revenue coming from? And so that can get so overwhelming. And when you fail, you start to think you're a failure. And so how do I make sure that I keep moving forward is you've got to have that mission. You've got to have that North Star. And you guys are it for me. And so I am not bashful about that. I know exactly why I get up every day. ultimately is to save that 14-year-old girl. And so that used to be me that felt very insecure. So every time that whether it's business or emotions, it's all the same thing. It's like I have to remind myself of what I'm doing, what I'm not good at, who I want to be, and how I show up every single day. And I think that whether you've owned a business or, whatever it is that thing that you want to do in life, I think that you're going to find that the emotional piece is the hard, at least for me, it was the hardest thing for me, because there's a massive difference between knowing something and then actually doing something. Now, when you know something, why don't you do it? For me, it was like my emotions. The negative voice in my head always got in the way. So even though I knew it, I wasn't propelling forward. And so even with what we're talking about now, like business, it's all the same to me. It's all about neurochemistry. How do I show up every day? And what am I doing today to better my life or better other people's lives?
Right. And like every day in your life, like you were talking about, there's a very common rails business in life. But I just know for a fact you were talking automatically about some of the trials or tribulations that you experienced in Quest, whether it was figuring out the bars, which I didn't even know I was going to talk about Quest, but like literally when you were telling me back there, but like it's so true, because you have to problem solve to figure out, do you have the grit to figure out how to manufacture these? They're getting too hot, too cold. People told you couldn't manufacture the bar. It wouldn't taste any good. You couldn't use those ingredients, is what you're sharing with me. But you had to press on. If you would have listened to their opinion, you would have stopped and never got that experience. But you kept pushing forward and kept pushing on and learned how to figure out how to make the standard a bar that you wanted. And that's why it was successful. If you would have listened to everyone else, it wasn't. So, my curiosity would be, what are some of the trials and tribulations that you took on with Quest that you use every day in your life to get you now to, start sharing that, some of those tools for people to overcome them?
I love this. So I think a lot of people here have probably heard about like the power of belief, right? If you believe you can, you can. If you believe you can't, you won't. But sometimes there's the naive belief, there's the blind belief, or there's the belief in just oneself. So when we said, okay, we're going to make a protein bar, everyone was like, what the hell do you guys know about protein bars? Now, we believed, if we believe we can do it, but the truth was we knew nothing about protein bars. So other people's opinions at that time, when they were saying, you know nothing about it, was actually accurate. So you have to rely on the belief that even if they're accurate, can I overcome the problems they're saying I'm going to face? So that is why the power of belief to get started, to be the person that you believe that if you face a challenge, if you face something that you're going to figure out. So going to what you were saying about manufacturing, we had no intention of manufacturing. That was the last thing we wanted to do. But we kept going to these places and we thought, make the bar, here's the ingredients. And they're like, there's a reason this doesn't exist. And so we got people saying, we need another protein bar, like we need a hole in the head. There was like 1,500 bars on the market at the time. So imagine, in case people didn't know, I was a stay-at-home wife for 8 years, supporting my husband. I was putting clothes out for him and I was cooking for him every single day. And so when my husband came home and said, we're starting this protein bar company, I was like, all right, what do we have to do to figure it out? Because I was so scared that we would lose our house. So now there's a real thing that you can actually lose if you don't show up every day and figure it out. So when somebody was right and they said you don't know how to manufacture bars, and we bought a machine and we put we called it the matrix. We put the matrix in, and then all of a sudden the machine sees up and like. You're like, oh God, are they really right? And in those moments, you have to say, but how can I figure this out? How can I overcome this problem? So the power of belief just allows you to think outside of the box. It doesn't mean that you're always going to be right. You may believe in something and it may tank, but that's okay. What did you learn by doing that thing that failed? And I think we so focus on the failure part. And so the manufacturing problems that you were saying is, we didn't know that butter had to be at a certain temperature. So we're throwing in the peanut butter, and we're throwing in this, and we're like, it tastes good. And then all of a sudden, a week later, it doesn't work. Right. And the machine seizes up. So it's always figuring things out. But the biggest lesson I really learned in the manufacturing side of it was very early on. So again, because I'd been a stay-at-home wife for my husband, I wasn't used to business. So the second something failed, I went into like DEFCON 1. I was like, oh my God, I'm losing my house. This is, we've wasted all our money, we've wasted all our time. And this one occasion changed the way that I saw business forever. It was early days at Quest. We're sitting there. Tom and I had just about had enough money to have someone else manufacture the bar. So we had our own production facility, and we hired a crew to come and make the bars. There was about 2 or 3 people. We're sitting in the office, and one of the guy comes in. He's deathly white, and he's looking, and he's like, I'm so sorry. I've messed up. And at the time, when you're a startup business, like, any little mistake can actually be catastrophic to your business. So we're like, what did you do? And he's like, I've put in the wrong ingredients. I'm so sorry. We're like, what? Oh, okay. I start panicking. My husband's he's really cool, like cool cat. So he's like, don't worry, babe. Let's just go figure out. So we walk in there, and the guy starts telling us that he mixed the protein powder, the peanut butter, the sweeteners, but he accidentally took the flavoring from a different flavor bar, the mixed berry bar, and put it in the peanut butter bar. And we're like, we're going to have to
peanut
trash
butter and
it.
jelly.
There it is. So now I'm British. Peanut butter and jelly doesn't exist in England. Just to put that as a little caveat. So I'm like, oh my God, that sounds disgusting. Like, who's going to try this? And Tom's like, babe, we just got to try it. We've got to have to see, it's not a failure until we figure it out or until we actually see what we've got. So everyone's like tasting it. Someone's like, it tastes like PB&J. And we're like, what if we just put it up on Facebook and said, we've got a new prototype, only 200 available. We had these silver wrappers that we would do when we were testing bars. So we're like, we're just going to wrap them in these silver wrappers. I quickly ran to my little office with my Staples printer. I start printing out, and I literally changed the title at the top. Instead of it saying peanut butter, it said peanut butter and jelly, because the only nutritional difference that changed was the flavoring. So your nutrition facts were all the same. So I print them out on my Staples printer, quickly fold them up, put them in these nondescript boxes. We blast it on Facebook, because that was like the big thing back then. And we sold out like that. And everyone was like, oh my God, new prototype, I want this. Now, a week later, because we shipped them all out, everyone's freaking out now on Facebook about how amazing this PB&J bar is. All the people that didn't get to buy them were now having major FOMO. So before we knew it, everyone was like, you've got to make this bar. Within a month, we got the package designed. We released it as our new flavor. It became our top-selling protein bar on the market. And the lesson I learned is all failures can be an amazing opportunity if you look for it. Yeah. That was it. And so...
And you know what? I mean, it's a great marketing lesson as well. Is scarcity sells. I mean, same thing happened to us, actually. It's funny. I'm just sitting here grinning. Literally... We didn't have packaging in.
That's
and so
amazing.
First we had to do is just these white labels, and we just put a sticker on top of it, but it made people curious. And it also made people feel like that they were a part of this process, that they were a part of the beginning. It worked out really well. It's just funny when you said that. I was like, it's so funny. Literally, it happened the exact same way with us.
Here's the difference, though, that I think I would do now to back then. And this is before I think I had a growth mindset. Now, I would be so honest. I would post, oh, my God, guys, we totally messed up, and it made the most amazing bar. Who wants to try it? That's what I would do now.
Yeah. But that is true. I mean, I think transparency is key, not only in business, but in life, right? And I think the more comfortable or the more courageous that you become with being vulnerable or being open or honest, because it takes courage to do that, but there's a lot more value that comes out into the world, even from a marketing perspective, when you just said that's why you do it now. But what makes you say that now you would do it that way? Like, what growth did you have or distinction?
I think for me now, there's so much, I mean, especially with social media and things, people really resonate with authenticity. And so to me, it's like, I have no problem making mistakes. I have no problem making errors and failing. And back then I did, because I thought failing meant I was a failure. Right? But here's the thing. Failing does mean something about you, just not what you think. Failing to me now, how I perceive it is, it means that I care enough about my life to go after something that scares me. And if we can reframe failure as that, guys, now, I mean, I heard you guys backstage when you guys were talking about your fears. It was so strong. Like, fears are so powerful. And I think that part of, for me, was I was so fearful that if I failed, people would mock me. I would be made fun of because I was teased as a kid. So that's one of my triggers, if you will. So when you get triggered, you try to run away and hide from the thing that's going to trigger you. So for me, admitting that I failed was to me something that would become very detrimental to my self-esteem, that would then knock me back. But now, to be honest, because I understand what failure actually means, I would be so honest about it. And if someone was like, oh, you're a failure, and I'm like, cool. If that mindset serves you, then carry that mindset with you. It doesn't serve me, so I'm not going to adopt to that mindset.
And I think a lot of times that mindset comes as you're getting to know yourself and grow or having radical confidence. A lot of times the fear isn't even our fear. It's the fear of what other people are going to perceive of us. Like, we're more worried about what other people think of us than actually what we're even feeling.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we're told our whole lives, right? That, well, you can't get an F. I failed a lot of my classes in school, and so it made me feel like I was a failure. But here I am. I've, been behind $1 billion company. I've been behind $1 billion, content that's reached over 1 billion people, and I still don't mind admitting that I fail, and that's how I grow. That's how I get better. And if we can all literally take that one notion that failure just means you care about your life, now go out and fail a shit ton. I'm not sure if I can swear here, but they go out and fail a shit ton, people.
So, quick question. This is like a question someone would ask me, or they have asked me before, but you just said it. What would you identify as your, I don't want to say greatest failure, because I think every failure gets you to a place where you want to go, but a time where you can associate that was a defining moment through failure. For instance, Prove It, our company and brand and what we're doing as a community movement was started. I don't even like to use the word failure because I just think it's part of the process of a huge failure for me. Like, I mean, it literally, I thought it was going to be the biggest win, and it was the most devastating crush. But if I hadn't have gone through that, I wouldn't have been able to carry the weight of success of what happened here. So, like, it was all designed on purpose. So I would say that was a defining moment for me on the other side to look back to say, if I hadn't have gone through that, there's no way. So I'm just curious if you have one in mind that was a real defining moment that you could identify as like, holy shit, I thought I was crushed, but man, it's made me who I am.
Yeah, I really do. I don't know how many people know my background, so I'll just give a very quick little story. I've been struggling with health issues now for over 6 years. About 6 years ago, just as Quest was at the pinnacle of our success, I was working really hard, 14 hours a day, 17 hours a day. I mean, I was just grinding because I thought, because I felt badly about myself, that every hour I would work would be a validation that I was worth it. And so I wouldn't give myself a break. I never gave myself a day off. I never gave myself time off. And that really took a toll to my body. I ignored self-care. That wasn't even in my, that was like the lowest part of my priority. And on top of that, for the last 20 years, I had a very unhealthy relationship with food. So I was getting sick because I thought carbs were bad. I thought fat was bad. I was getting sick because 70% of your immune system's carried in your gut. I wasn't replenishing it. So I was just getting sick all the time. I was taking antibiotics. Antibiotics were killing my gut bacteria. I wasn't replenishing my gut bacteria. So eventually, at the pinnacle of Quest's success, we finally get the dream come true, the thing that everyone fights for. You really think, oh my God, this is going to make my life the best ever. And the day that we were celebrating was the day I took a swig of champagne as a celebration. And it's the day that I say my gut erupted. And that was about 7 years ago now, and I haven't been the same since. Now, it was the most amazing thing to ever happen to me, because at that moment that I literally just touched the pinnacle of success, the thing that we thought was going to make us happy. And I realized, oh, thank you. Money actually doesn't buy happiness, because I couldn't even stand up. Guys, when you can't stand up for more than 5 minutes at a time, when you can't even hug your own husband for over a year because you're in that much pain, you can imagine that wealth means nothing. And it became so strong in that moment that I recognize I've done such a disservice to myself, to my body, and now I'll never do that again. And from that moment, I flipped. Self-care became my priority. I still work very hard, but self-care became my priority. And that was one of those moments where I don't think I would have put myself first if that hadn't have happened, if I hadn't have fallen to my knees. And then the second part of that story, if you don't mind me sharing it, is I tell it in the book, so some of you may have already heard it. But I was in a photo shoot one day. I was still very much struggling with my health. I was just trying to suck it up like so many of us do, pretend everything's fine, ignore it, put on the brave face. You don't want to look weak in front of people. So I was on this photo shoot. I all of a sudden got these massive cramps. And when you've got digestive issues, they can be all-consuming. I could barely breathe. I could barely think. So I ran upstairs, and I just fell to the floor. I didn't want to do it in front of anyone. Which, side note, I don't know if you know, but most women that choke on food end up dying. Sorry to be a bit morbid, but bear with me. They end up dying because they're too embarrassed to choke in front of people that they go to the bathroom, and they end up dying. Because we don't want to make other people uncomfortable by choking. So that's how bad I think us women have gotten in our heads that we don't want to make other people uncomfortable. We've got to get over that shit real fast. Just saying. So anyway, I'm one of those people back then, so I'm like, I can't, say that I'm sick or that my gut's hurting me. So I run upstairs and I fall to the floor. And as I fall to the floor, I can barely breathe. And I'm taking these deep breaths. I'm desperately trying to get a hold of myself. And I'm like, okay, I need my husband. And me and my husband have a rule. You can call once, I can ignore you. You can call twice, I can ignore you. On the third call, if you're even with the President of the United States, you've got to say, I'm so sorry, I've got to answer the phone. So that's just a rule that we've got. Thank you. So first call, I was like, okay, no, he's going to not answer. Second call, okay, no, he's going to ignore. Third call, I got him. Dring, dring, he doesn't answer. So I'm now on the floor, clutching my stomach. He doesn't answer. And I'm like, I need my husband. Oh, crap. I don't need my husband. I want my husband. I don't need him. Lisa, you are the hero of your own life. Get up off the damn floor and show yourself what you're made of. And that became the pinnacle of why I honestly, from now you see on the book, I always say, be the hero of your own life. No one's coming to save you. And I don't mean that as like a terrible, oh my God, you're all alone. I mean it as like, isn't that the most beautiful thing? That you're no longer waiting for someone else to come, that it's actually within you, that you can build the strength. Because I personally don't believe it's always within you. I feel like you can build something. So, but isn't that beautiful that you can build it? So when I talk about being that pinnacle moment that taught me everything in life, that went from my health to my business, to my relationships, to my friendships. Everything it starts with me. I have to be the hero of my own life first.
I love that. I do. I love it.
Thank you.
I have a friend that does a lot of coaching, and she always says, you got to put on your own crown. You got to wear your own, otherwise you don't earn it. It's not your crown. But Same thing, be the hero of your life. I have so many questions that I want you to talk about, like when you're talking about that. Number one, and we'll get to all of them, right? So I met Tom 7 years ago as we were starting this. I think he was just starting, y'all were just doing the impact theory. It was actually an event. Y'all hear me talk about the T.D. Jakes story. I think you were at the event with me where T.D. Jakes was there, and he gave an unbelievable speech on the way to success, and it hit me right at the right time. But Tom was there as well, and got to meet Tom. But you are doing a lot of relationship stuff, which I want to talk about a little bit here because it relates, right? We have a lot of people that are in relationships that, sometimes you have supportive spouses, sometimes you don't. And I really like your all's relationship content that you're putting out. So I want to talk about that. I have a personal question, what do you do for self-care, right? Because I think self-care, some people hear that, some people know what it means, some people don't. And then I also want to talk more about your book. But I'm just on a personal note, what is some of the self-care, and then how has your gut issues now.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm definitely better. I still have to travel with food. So even coming here, I had to have my little, like, my homemade chicken and my vegetables. And because oils are the thing that gets me a lot. They hide oil, canola oil, grapeseed oil. They hide it in everything, guys. You just don't know what's there. So I always bring food with me. I carry my little pill packets with all my supplements, my gut digestion pills. I just, again, take total ownership because I'm not looking for someone else to help me. It is all on me. And so making sure that when I travel, I know what I have to do. So that's kind of like when I travel, but on a weekly basis. So even when I was launching this book, right, I had all my friends, amazing authors that like, it's going to be so hard. You're going to have to go ham. Like you'll give up everything in your life in the promotion. And I was like, okay, I need to sit here and go, I know that's not good for me. I've been there. I've literally done the ignore your self-care. So what else, I made myself a promise back then that I'd never do it again. So even if I'm promoting my book, what am I going to do to make sure that I have self-care? So the day, we were traveling on like the Sunday or something to go to New York to promote. And on the Saturday, I took the whole day off work. I switched my phone off and I just drew. So I do a lot of art. I just draw. That's my way of just me, the paper and the pencil again. It's like me against me. It's what I love to do because no one can influence that. No one can turn up and say, well, you can't do that. Either you do or you don't. So drawing is beautiful for me. And then switching my phone off, though, when I do it is imperative. And that's where boundaries come in. Because when I first told my family and even my husband, like, I've decided I'm going to switch my phone off on Saturdays, everybody had a heart attack. Everybody's like, what do you mean? What if we need you? What if the... And I was like, all right, let's take one problem at a time. What if people in my business needs me? Call my husband. All right, that's pretty easy, right? Like, we're business partners. So, okay, well, what if my family need me? All right, well, you live in England. Like, I hate to say it, but I'm not going to get there quickly. It's going to take me 24 hours. So, obviously, tell Tom, but again, I'm still not going to get there quickly. And so then it's like you take one problem at a time, and you're starting to allow people to voice their concerns. So, one of the problems was, well, what if what if someone doesn't have Tom's number? And I was like, I just had to be comfortable with myself to say, then homie, you're not close enough to me to warrant me disturbing my self-care time. Like, said with love, right? I'm not like that, like, I'll take it and, I don't think boundaries, I don't think people will greet your boundary if you go, this is the way or the highway. So do it with compassion, but that was my way of setting myself up for it. Now, once I set myself up for it, you just have to stick to it, and people start to learn. So I started to stick to it. And then like 2 years later or something, there was one time that I said, I'm going to call you on a Saturday. And my family had a heart attack. They're like, no, you're not going to do that. It's your self-care time. So you end up, when you stick to it, when you respect yourself, when you respect the boundary that you're going to set, eventually people will either do one or two things. They're either going to respect it too or they're not. And if they don't respect it, then it's up to you on what you do about it, right? We all have those choices. So that's I'm very strict on my self-care. That's very important to me.
That's really good. So being present with yourself is one of the, I need to work on that one. It's really, really good.
I mean, and here's the thing. I think it came to, if I hadn't have hit rock bottom with my health, I don't know if I would have been that easy for me to have set and stuck to it. Yeah. It was just one of those moments where I grew up with a mum that was borderline anorexic. And so I had a very unhealthy relationship with food. And so knowing that and knowing what I have to do to get my mindset where I don't see food as the enemy, that I can keep showing up, that it is fuel, it takes time, it takes practice, it takes repetition, it takes making a promise to yourself, though. And that's what I ended up doing. And keep it. Well, yes, of course you have to keep it. But that was one of those, in that moment, where my gut fell apart. I said, okay, I've made decisions due to the visual physicalities of what I thought how I was going to get accepted. And I think that a lot of us I don't necessarily want to generalize, but may make poor decisions based on the validation that we're seeking. Right? Based on, we want to get that pat on the back. So for me, I was a stay-at-home wife for 8 years. Why the hell didn't I speak up and tell my husband I was miserable? Because I was getting amazing validation for being an amazing wife. And so I was getting that from my family. I was getting that from my husband. I mean, there's a whole host of other reasons why I didn't speak up, which we can go down if you like. But When you
I
think,
mean, my number one thing that came to my mind, I didn't mean to interrupt
No,
your
please.
pattern, but is like what made that shift? Because after 8 years, it becomes a condition too. Like you're conditioning yourself. So I always find that something has to jolt you out of it, or you're so miserable that jolts you itself. But I'm just curious, what was the polarizing moment that you knew this isn't me?
I really wish I could give you a polarizing moment. It just wasn't. The
Right.
truth is that, and I think it's actually more powerful to recognize sometimes it's not. Because sometimes, I don't know about you guys, but you look at like maybe where you are and you're like, how did I end up here? It's never like that. Not
Just
never, but
little-
it's little decisions, day after day after day after day, where you're like, it's not that bad. You know, I'm all right. I'm fine. I'm just going to do it for a year. You know, that was it. I literally was like, I'm just going to be a stay-at-home wife for a year, support my husband. And when I say, that wasn't my dream. So that is no judgment on anything else, but that wasn't my dream. So I was like, I could do this for a year. That was one decision. My husband comes back home. He's like, we just need another year. And I said, okay, it's fine. What's another year? Pleasing this person, helping this person out, making a little sacrifice here, making a little sacrifice there, ends up building up. And that build up ended up for me being 8 years where I was completely miserable and not speaking up about the fact that I wasn't happy. And so when my husband came home with the idea of Quest with his business partners, I was like, how can I help? Because I had the identity of being the good wife. So I actually started just helping out with Quest, being like, what can I do? And they were all trying to sell their other business. I won't bore you with that side of the story, but they were trying to sell their business. So I was the only one free. So everyone's like, oh, do you mind just shipping this out of the living room? I was like, I can ship a bar, right? Put it in a box, throw a stamp on, and you're good. But then we grew at 57,000%, which wasn't anything that I expected. So when you go at 57,000%, you go from shipping bars of your living room floor one day to 3 weeks later, you're shipping bars from your business partner's garage. To a month later, you got now your own facility. To a month later, you've got your own employee. To 2 years later, I turned around, I had 40 employees underneath me and had 0 experience. So it wasn't like a jolt, it was a bit by bit. Now the identity piece was I was helping out my husband. And when that shifted for me was when it went from I no longer am here to help save my house, because our house was on the line when we when we started Quest. So I'm no longer helping to save my house. I loved what I was doing. Every day I was being challenged. I'd never been challenged for 8 years. Every day I was actually facing my inadequacies. I was literally facing things that I was no good at. And because of the fear of my house, I figured it out. And in figuring it out, I started to build validation within myself. My identity started to shift from being a great supportive woman to my husband to being someone that can actually show up even when she doesn't know what she's doing, to being someone that even when I face the hard things, I'm still going to show up with a smile on my face. That identity shift was everything for me. And then the validation was, oh, I didn't know that. I was scared of that. And now I can do it. That's amazing. That's on me. That's internal validation. And that was the biggest pivotal moment for me to be able to say to my husband, I don't want to take care of you anymore. Now, that was a very big shift. You can't just say it like that. So you say it with softness. But I did have to but I didn't think I had the confidence to tell him for 8 years.
Well, this is a good transition point, I think, because when you're telling the story, I'm relating to it, and I'm hearing, I'm identifying with two things. Number one is, and I know Tom is very practical, he's very aware, but let's just say that there's people that get caught up in that pattern or that conditioning that are becoming miserable, but they don't have someone quite as understanding or as open or a partner that, because I think this is true, right? It's relatable. What would you suggest to them? Because like you said, is that you didn't have the confidence. And so when I first saw your book, when it came out, it resonated with me. Like on my arm, my dad used to drop me off for school and say, be positive and confident in all you do. Like I understand the power of confidence. And before you leave, I'd love for you to kind of share with people, if they don't have the confidence, how can they build it? What is this radical confidence and how can they go get it? But what would you suggest for people that they might be learning right now internally that they are miserable too, but they also don't see a way out. They don't have a path out and they don't have the confidence to take that first step.
So this is huge. I didn't have the confidence. So even though I was like, I realized, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. I've realized this new path. I've realized, oh my God, I'm building this internal validation within myself. This feels amazing. I didn't know what I was doing. I still didn't have the confidence. And you saying that, you know, if they don't have a relationship like me and Tom's, you're hearing our relationship from now, but it's been developed from these moments. So I didn't know how he was going to respond. I told my husband I wanted 4 children when I married him. And you know, that was my dream. And here I was. I'd been looking after him for 8 years. I didn't want to cook for him anymore. I didn't want to clean for him anymore. And I didn't want any children. Now, here's the thing. He has every right to say, you're changing. You told me you wanted children. That's something that is important to me, right? He could have said that to me. And then that would have been, how would we navigate that? Maybe we would have got divorced. I don't know. But what I did was I just had to be honest with him and give him the space to be honest with me. And also recognizing I was the one changing. So I had to give him the space to have an opinion about it. So I had to, because I didn't have the confidence, I literally sat back and wrote a list. And that's what radical confidence is, guys. When you don't have the confidence, but you've got to do it anyway, it becomes write a blueprint, write a plan, so that when you are scared, when you are fearful, you have a plan to go by. So you don't let your emotions take over. Because that was the thing. I didn't want to, my husband, I didn't want to.
So, if you say that again, I just think some people need to hear it. Because some people, they think it's this fortitude, but like the plan gives you confidence because you can rely on it and not your emotional intelligence or let your emotions steer you.
Yeah.
Because your emotions can shut you down.
Of course, yeah. And that was exactly why I came up with radical confidence, because my emotions kept shutting me down. My emotions shut me down for over 8 years. And so I was like, oh, well, how on earth do you speak up? Do you say the hard things when you don't feel great? And so it became like people want the confidence. But what I realized was confidence was the byproduct of taking action. So I actually want you guys to write that down. Confidence is the byproduct of taking action. So I knew I had to take action. But it's one thing to say take action, but it's a whole other thing to actually do it. When you're scared, when you're worried that maybe my husband's about to leave me, which is very true, I didn't know how he was going to respond. But I knew I had to say it. So I knew I had to do the act, but I was scared. So I knew I had to have radical confidence, which meant I had to basically write out a blueprint of what am I going to say? How am I going to handle it? And so I knew, number one, do it when you guys are great, when the connection is pure, when you are feeling tight. Number two, I went in saying, I realize I've changed and this is who I am. Number three, I went in admitting I was the one that hadn't been honest with him. But here's the truth. I hadn't been honest with myself. And I told him that too. So I was like, babe, for the last 8 years, I've been miserable. I love you more than life itself. But I don't want to put clothes out for you anymore. And it would sadden me, and I literally wrote this out, guys, before I went and spoke to him. It would sadden me if you equated my love for me cleaning for you. But I recognize I've been doing that for 8 years. And so what's that new habit or that new connection that we can build? But I love you and I no longer want to take care of you. And so, but that's the truth. And so we really had the honest truth. And he said, okay, well, I need space to be honest with you. And I had to be not defensive. I had to bring my defenses down because there was that part of me, guys. There's this part of me that wanted to go in. That is a bit of a bull. And is like, I don't want to take care of you anymore. I don't want to be a stay-at-home wife, and so you're going to have to like it or lump it. Like that, because, now I don't mean that in a cruel way, but there's the insecurity in me, and it's the insecurity in me that would be the bull. And that's why, because I'd be like, I don't want him to push me, so I would have to be strong. But that also doesn't help, because what's going to happen? He's going to put his walls up. So I knew that. I processed it beforehand. I knew that my natural inclinations wasn't going to help the discussion. And so I just told him how I felt. And then I said, and now I want to give you space to be honest with me. And he said, okay, well, what kind, I've loved you taking care of me. I've loved, you putting clothes out for me. But what kind of husband would I be when you sit here and you tell me that it has made you profoundly unhappy? What kind of husband would I be that I said, if I was to say that I would rather have clean underwear over your happiness? And that's what it came down to. But it had to do with me being honest with him about my unhappiness. and to give him space. And then the final thing, once we realize that, all right, we're on the same page, but it doesn't mean it's going to be easy. So then we started going, okay, well, what does the future look like that I can help you adapt to this new way that Lisa Bilyeu, is going to show up? And so I made this suggestion to him. I was like, babe, what if I wean you off me taking care of you? Sounds like a good plan. And because literally I was stabbing in the dark, guys. I was like, why is it hard for people to make a change? It's the sudden change. It's the, oh my God, I don't know, like the uncomfortableness of what's going to happen. So I was like, instead of making him uncomfortable, like all of a sudden he has to wake up and he's starving and he doesn't know where the food is because I've been doing it for the last 8 years. I said, I'll wean you off. So next week, babe, I'm just going to cook and clean for you 6 days. And then the week after that, I'm going to do it for 5. And the week after that, I'm going to do it for 4. How do you feel about that? Now he heard that I was trying to bring us together. I was trying to make it work together. And so we ended up like coming up with a plan. And then the final thing, the very final thing that is so imperative, whether it's related to like you with a partner or not, mourn the life you are leaving behind. Even if it's moving towards a life that you freaking love. So for me, it was, I really wanted children. The only thing that I wanted more was to not have children. So it wasn't that I didn't want children. It was just the life that I really enjoyed of not having children was much stronger for me. But it didn't mean that I had to deny or pretend that part of me didn't exist. So I actually had to mourn not being a mother. I was excited about having the baby grow inside me. I was excited about seeing a little Tom run around with his little ears. Like I could get like super excited. Even now, guys, I can convince myself. But I know that I don't ultimately want children. But I still had to mourn the life I was leaving behind. Why? Because I was worried one day it would catch me off guard. And one day, all of a sudden, there's unprocessed emotions that all of a sudden come a wave at me. And now, let's say I'm in my 60s and it's too late for me to bear my own children. So I think processing all of that evolution that you guys are going through, being open to being able to leave that life behind, and then giving yourself the grace to know it's not going to be an easy path.
That grace word keeps coming up.
I love that word. It is one of my favorite words because I beat myself up a lot. I used to beat myself up a lot. And now I just give myself grace for beating myself up and then listen to what I'm trying to tell myself.
Yeah, you said, processing emotions even as a parent. Sometimes the hardest thing to do is when you see your child having emotions, you want to stop their emotions, like especially if they're sad or mad or angry or crying, you want to stop that. And one of the things that I've learned through parenting is like that's the worst thing I could do as a parent. Like you got to give them and let them have their emotions, right? Is if they're mad or pissed off at you, they have a right to be pissed off at you as their parent and let them voice that. I mean, because if you don't, it does suppress and it'll come out in other ways later on in life. And I think that for some of us, we still have some of that unprocessed emotion, as we were childs or things that we were growing up through. And so just when you said that, it's pretty amazing that even if you're growing, make sure that you're also processing along the way. And everybody in here, you have emotions towards different things, and if you don't process the emotions, they'll come back and it will bite you. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, and contentment, especially when you're talking about a relationship and not saying the real thing and not having that discussion there and then. Contentment, I believe, is like, one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Like, it will come and bite you in the ass in your relationship, and it's so hard to unwind. And again, guys, it wasn't that I had the confidence to go and tell my husband that. It was that I had the radical confidence and knew that if I don't handle it with as much openness right now, is that eventually there may be contempt. He may hold something against me in the future. So we have to lay everything out on the table right now. All the ugly, the hard. But when you're doing it from a place where you really want to come together, and if you align in your goals in a relationship, like that is so important. I find a lot of couples. I liken it to a game of tennis. I don't know if I already told you this game. I love this analogy. But like a lot of couples I noticed were on one side of the net. You're playing the same game, but only one of you can win, right? So like you're hitting the ball to them, they're hitting the ball to you. And so I just go, what would it look like if I was playing a game of doubles? if I win, he wins. If he wins, I win. If I'm weak, he's got my back. If he's weak, I've got his back. And so really thinking of it like that, when I was going in telling him I no longer wanted to do this, and now here I want to be an entrepreneur and go out and, do these things, I needed him. I not needed him. I wanted him to be on board with it. And so making sure that you're having those honest conversations so that he can say openly in those moments, if there's anything that it's a deal breaker. If it's a deal breaker or not, have it then, because the last thing you want is to find out later.
Mm. So you say contempt. I think that's a pretty good transition point. I'd love to dive into that word a little bit more, because I think a lot of relationships, whether it's business, significant others, spouses, that contempt is caused by suppressed emotion, right? Is anger, but kind of going along that contempt sign is I see a lot of people that they get mad at each other in business, and then they hold contempt for the other person in their personal relationship if they're working together. But what are some tips that you would say that you've experienced, and now maybe you have? I don't like the word rules, because I like to break rules. But my point is, but you all might have some patterns of standards that you all keep now, so you can continue to work with each other. But I don't know if you have any tips, because from the outside looking in, it looks like that you all are doing a fantastic job of it, but we don't see the nitty gritty of like you said, where it started and where it is now is a totally different story.
So you don't like rules, but we have a Bible of rules. You have to. It has to be literally, we've got so many rules when it comes to our business. And the very first thing was, if you both have the same skill set, then one of you is obsolete. So for us, we were just literally I was okay, so what are you strong at? What am I strong at? This is what you're going to handle. Being very clear about that from the get-go is imperative. Okay, number one. So if I have the expertise in logistics, when something comes up, and it's a logistics question, I have the authority. Because you don't want my husband saying something about you just don't want him making decisions about logistics. So sometimes he tries though. And it becomes know what your strength is and know what your partner's strength is. And then agree ahead of time who has the final say. Now we also have rules about the language we use. So sometimes Tom will make a decision or I'll make a decision, we don't agree. So we then say, okay, cool. Let's have a talk. Let's convince each other, or convince me, or I'll try and convince you. So let's say I have the final say, and my husband tries to convince me, and I'm just not convinced, and I'm the expert at this thing. We have a rule that if I'm not able to, or he's not able to convince me, or vice versa, you have to say, I disagree, but commit. Guys, that is so strong. Because have you ever found someone when they don't agree with you and you're like, oh, fine, let's just do it. And they want you to fail because there's I told you so. That doesn't make for a good business. If you want your partner not to succeed, your business won't succeed. So if you don't agree with your partner, you still got to commit to their decision. And that made such a difference. And we do this in front of our team. So there was actually one time there was 25 of us, our marketing team, everyone's there. And it was Tom's final say. I disagree with him. And I'm saying to him, no, we're having it out in front of the team because we think it's very important to have these discussions in front of people, because it's not husband and wife, we're business partners. And so in that moment where he's like, no, I'm deciding to go this way, I turned around and I was like, all right. I disagree, but commit. And everyone sees that unity. They see that you're aligned on what you're trying to do with the business. So those are a couple of little techniques on when you're partnering. Now, the emotional side of it when it comes to husband and wife, to me, is the trickier part. Because again, I'm very emotional. So I can definitely be you're not being nice to me. He's there's no, I'm your business partner. I'm just telling you the truth, and I will slip into wife mode. So that has been an evolution, really working on things. Now, for me, it's been easier to be on or off. It's hard for me to be I'm kind of your wife, I'm kind of your business partner. It just didn't work for me. But my husband is always on, working-wise. He works 20 hours a day. I mean, it's insane. So, but I can't because of my health. I don't want to, in fact, because of my health. So I've made a rule that when I'm off work, I have to literally be off work. Now, when you live in the same house, especially over quarantine, it was very difficult to separate the two. And so I would be there, like, okay, I've just relaxed. It's 8 p.m. I'm watching my Sex and the City or whatever I'm watching. And I would be like down, and he would walk in. He's like, can you believe, or did you hear about? And I'm like, stop. And we would really butt heads. And I'm like, I understand you want the life where you're always on. I respect that. I know the man I married. I support that. But I can't always be on. So where's that fine line? And so he's like, well, I don't know. And I was like, all right, let's just sit down and go, this is a problem. This is a problem for both of us, and how are we going to solve it? And so I came up with the idea. Have you guys ever been to a Brazilian restaurant? So you have those things. It's like meat on, meat off. I was like, what if I have a thing that's Lisa's on, Lisa's off? And so I was like, what can I literally looked around my room, and I was like, all right, what could it be? I was like, oh, my lamp. So I was like, all right, babe, so this is the new rule. With the lamp, if it's on, it means I'm in personal time. And if it's off, then it means I'm still in work mode. And he's like, okay, great. Now, look, one thing is, understand that habits are going to take time. So it's not like he's always going to nail it the first time. So always give people the grace to mess up and at least try to improve when you've set a boundary. But bless him, so he comes in the very next day and he walks in and he's like, hey babe, love you. And he walks back out because the light was on. So those are like little things where we are not perfect in any way, shape, or form. We're totally we just figure shit out. It's like here's a problem. I don't freaking know what I'm doing. What's an idea you have? And then we just refine it. And now look, that may not have worked. I wouldn't have given up. I would have kept going. All right, what is another technique? How do until I find a solution? I love being my husband wrapping it. So my husband's 6 foot, I'm 5'1". So I love it when he just wraps his arms around me and squidges on me. But when I'm in business mode, I'm like, I don't want to be hugged. I don't want to be squishy. I'm in get shit done mode. I have a flip. And so I realized that I was going to my husband like a hard ass. I don't actually like that with him. And so I was like, he didn't either like it either. He's like, you're kind of getting hard. And I was like, yeah, I am, aren't I? And I was like, well, I understand. And he understood too why it was needed, right? It was a skill set I was developing because I didn't know how to be a boss. I didn't know how to be a leader. I thought I had to get hard. So that was just part of my evolution. I recognized that wasn't a good strategy. So how do I not get hard now? How do I stand up for myself? How do I set boundaries? How do I be strong but not get hard? And so I just stumbled in the dark. And I was like, oh, you know what? When I get my braids in and when I put my jewelry on, I kind of feel like a badass. But when I'm in my fluffy pajamas and my hair's tied back and I got no makeup on, I kind of want to be squishy and hugged. And so I literally now use it as a process of when I have stopped work, I will either listen to some music, I'll put on my fluffy Wonder Woman pajamas, which I actually have. Because that's what makes me feel cozy. And so now it's a whole process. It's I suit up. So come in here, I suited up. I got some socks on that says you can do it. In fact, should I just show you? All right. Here we go. She believed she could. So she did. I didn't actually have any intention of showing you those, but those are my little motivation. It's my little way of gearing up to come on here with radical confidence because this is a little scary thing in front of all of you guys. So for me, it's just these tools. It's these ways that I show up to either. In fact, this is a perfect way of saying it. I know how to impact my emotions. I know how to get like a badass. I know how to go to a soft place. I know how to be empathetic. I know how to, and it's all because I wasn't able to be emotionally, I call it in my book, emotionally sober or emotionally regulated. And I noticed that my emotions were steering me astray. I think you actually said it earlier, right? That the emotions can really steer us astray. And so when I realize my emotions still steer me astray, I don't judge myself. I give myself the grace, but I don't accept it. And so I say sometimes, and I'm not saying, guys, don't feel your feelings. Of course, feel your feelings. But sometimes, let's face it, you can get yourself worked up. And, I call it emotional sobriety. Let's face it, I don't know if any about you guys. Anyone had too many drinks? Yeah, ever woken up the next day kind of regretting some things that maybe you said, maybe you did, maybe you danced on a table or two? No, just me.
Oh, man.
So I just recognize that just like alcohol, you can get too many shots of anger, too many shots of sadness, and you can eventually say something that you actually may regret. And so to me, I practice emotional sobriety, which means know your triggers, know what's going to escalate you, know what's going to wind you up, know what's going to trigger you. Don't judge yourself for it, but just know it, so then you know how to react. So for me, suiting up, suiting down are all tools that I use to help impact the emotion I'm trying to create and the vibe and the spirit.
That's awesome. And you have to spend time with yourself to know those things.
1,000%. Yes, guys. I'm not telling everyone to go get socks like me. Maybe you may want to, but figure out what that is for you. That's the whole thing.
Right.
Thank you for saying that, because I drill that down in the book so much. It's like, what is this for you guys? Some things I may say, you'll be like, nope, that doesn't resonate with me.
Yeah, and then because you can't be yourself if you don't know yourself.
Yeah.
And I just think so many people, they don't spend time getting to know themselves.
And then giving yourself grace again, that who you are today isn't necessarily, hopefully, right, and probably why you guys are all here, who you are today isn't who you're going to be next year. So
right,
everything right now, you just know that you're not going to be that person, and you're not going to be that person in 2 years if you keep working on yourself.
Yeah. The thing that I've always lived by, I've heard someone say it years ago, is that you're not going to stay the same. You're either going to get better or worse, but that choice is yours.
Yeah.
So then the power of choice comes in. But if you keep moving forward, you're going to end up better than you started. So change is inevitable. Progress is not, right? So so tell us a little bit about what you're passionate about right now. What projects are you working on? We know that we have Radical Confidence out here, which, by the way, how many of you have the book or read the book? How can we get the book? How many people want to read the book?
Yeah.
Yes. And then how we can support you as a community. What are you working on, and what can we get behind and support you?
Thank you. So I very much talk about, I mentioned it earlier about a mission. That is always my North Star is my mission. I ground myself in that every single freaking day, so that when I show up inadequate, when I show up scared, when I show up not thinking that I'm very confident in anything, I realign with my mission time and time again. A mission to me, guys, needs to be the what, the who, and the why. So for me, it is to create content that impacts 14-year-old girls, so they don't have to spend the next 20 years unwiring a negative mindset that I've had to do. Thank you. So I've got the what, create content. I need to know what the what is, right? Because there can be so many things that are going to come your way. And so for me, it's important to know the what. So I want to create content, the what. The who, 14-year-old girls. I think it's Mother Teresa. I may have misremembered that, but I think it's Mother Teresa that says, people won't fight for the masses, but everyone will fight for the one. So who is that one? Who is that one that you're going to wake up for tomorrow to fight for? When you feel insecure, when you don't feel like you have confidence, who is that one? And so for me, I can fight for that 14-year-old girl, because I was that 14-year-old girl. I know what it feels like to be teased, bullied, feel really badly about yourself, and feel extremely insecure. So you better believe every morning I can wake up I can wake up every morning focused on creating content for that 14-year-old girl, and the why, so that they don't have to spend the next 20 years unwiring their negative mindset like I've had to. And so so that to me is so imperative to align. So that's my mission. I urge you guys to all write a mission down. It should be very short. Do not make it a big novel, because you're never going to stick to it. It should be probably like an elevator pitch at most. And so that's my mission. The book is just one stepping stone into that, because this, to me, when I said, what does success look like for the book? It was if someone read it and then gave it to someone else in their lives. That is, to me, that then becomes the pebble that creates the ripples, that creates the tsunami.
I love it. I love it. And so, yes. And so in closing, and I think this is just a great question. So what do you hope that people think when they hear your name?
Ooh. I've never been asked that question before. That's interesting. When people... that I uplift other women. I wish I could be a little more eloquent than that, but like that's the truth. You have no idea, guys. I was bullied by girls, not by boys. So I grew up being intimidated by other women. I grew up seeing other women, I hate to say it, as the enemy. Guys, I got along very well with men and boys, but women were cruel to me. And so as I started to develop my own confidence, as I started to develop who I was like, oh my God, this was one of the most detrimental things to have ever happened to me. And so I will never adopt to that mindset ever. And so I'm like, how can I show up for a woman? Cool, what am I going to do? And because of that, that became then my mission, right? Then the 14-year-old girl, it led into that. So uplifting women is so, I've got no other words for you guys. Uplifting women.
Excellent. So what can we do to support you the best?
Oh God. It's such a weird question for me. I'm not a good salesperson, so I'm not going to say my book. Really just...
Well, I mean, we can tune in to you and Women of Impact to follow what you're doing.
There you go. Perfect.
You're always doing things to uplift women.
Yeah, so I have a show podcast, Women of Impact. Mostly I focus on YouTube as the visual content because my background's filmmaking, so I love the visual side of it. Plus just video, you can influence people's emotions by putting music and cuts and things like that. And again, I'm all about emotions. So yeah, Women of Impact or Lisa Bilyeu on Instagram. Tell your mates, tell your homies. Thank you guys so much for being here.
Give it up for Lisa.